You're listening to America's Voice Now, and we're back in our final and last segment of this morning. You know, yesterday and today, I've been trying to drive home the idea about what can we do to slow the onslaught, the juggernaut, if you will. And, you know, I'm accused by some people of being too harsh or, you know, too controversial. And the truth is, I tell the raw truth. You may or may not agree with it completely, and that's okay. I don't expect you to agree with everything I believe in or say. I also don't expect you to believe what I tell you. I expect you to go out and do your own homework and think for yourself. That's part of the critical thinking process. You don't believe me? Don't you dare believe what I say. Go out and verify it. Go out and educate yourself. Don't believe anything anyone tells you. What you need to believe is that which you have empirically proven to yourself. And to engage yourself in critical thinking and put yourself into that mode, you read that which you agree with, and you educate and learn that which you don't agree yourself with that which you do not agree with, that you don't like. And you may find that somewhere in the middle is the truth. Raw truth. But I'm going to tell you what the raw truth is for us right now. And that is, we have already lost our country. The republic is dead. And it is up to us at this stage in the game to either put the paddles of life on it and bring it back to life, or bury it. And I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to bury anything. The truth is, we have an opportunity here in front of us to make a difference and to change what's happening in our country and in our world. But we have to actually do it. We have to take action to accomplish that goal. And we have to be bold, but wise. We have to be subtle and sly. We have to be creative. And the idea here is that you're seeking to gum up the works. I talked yesterday about a number of ways that you could do that, not the least of which is filing lawsuits against the federal government or the state government for things that are going that you don't perceive. I got an email the other day from a guy who was trying to file the run in a state. And that state, like my state, by the way, says if you're a felon, you cannot run for elected office. Huh? No, that's true. You cannot run. In the state of Missouri, you cannot run for elected office. Is that right? No, of course it's not right. But that's not their point. Their point is they don't want you to have a part in the lawmaking process. Now, it doesn't matter whether your felony was when you were 20 years old and you're now 50 or you're now 60 and, you know, you are a pillar of the community or you've run a business and you've never even had so much as a traffic ticket. That doesn't matter. Is it unfair? Absolutely. But it is what it is. And this fella said, well, what can I do? In my state, not only can you not have a felony, you can't even have a federal misdemeanor. Wow. I mean, boy, that really limits the number of people that can run for office, doesn't it? And I said, well, you know what? File a lawsuit. It doesn't matter whether you win. It's that you make them do work and you distract them from, you know, they can't work at plotting and planning to destroy us if they're defending themselves. And like a guerrilla war, we have to not face the enemy head on, face to face. We have to harass them, nip at them, bleed them to death with the death of 1,000 cuts. Will we be bleeding ourselves? Of course. We can't do one without the other. But you got to recognize, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, as a nation, all hope is lost. We have zero control over this government. We have no control over the federal government and no real control over the state government either. We have law enforcement agencies that act more like jackbooted enforcers for thugocracies than we have police that are out there willing to defend us from those thugs. They're more like mercenary organizations that are run amok in a lot of cases. We have churches that have sold their congregations and their constituents down the drain for a 501c carrot. That's right, that little tax-exempt carrot. They don't care. And I got to tell you, I do this radio program in a church, but I have this radio program in a church that's been gracious enough to allow us to do this, and they agree. The 501c3 has been the bane of organized religion, because what it really does is it gives them the opportunity to use something, hold something over your head. This goes back to our argument earlier in the earlier segment about licensing journalists, right? Just like you're licensed to be a church by a 501c3, now you'll do whatever you need to do to keep that drug of tax-free money coming to you. You'll sell your soul. You'll sell your congregation's soul. How dare you? The truth is, raw truth is this. We've lost our country, and we've lost all semblance of integrity and honor. We've lost all hope that we can solve this in some political fashion. So now it's down to us to find another way to achieve the same goal. To hopefully bring about the change that we need, knowing that this isn't done yet. We haven't seen the worst of what's coming. So while we're preparing, we're also harassing the enemy with the death of 1,000 cuts. We know that we're not going to bleed them out immediately, but we can start to actively work towards those goals, practice now, and we do it all legally, we do it all above board, but we use practical, simple ways to accomplish those tasks. I want each of you to help me create groups of lists that we can use. Practical ways that we can gum up the works. Practical ways we can throw sand in the gears. We can pour Elmer's glue in the moving parts. Legally. I went over 100 examples the other day, and I'll throw a couple out there. If you work in a billing environment, well, you know, these large utilities that are playing games with us, great. Any company that you work with, misdirect their packaging. If you work for UPS or you work for FedEx and you see a package that's coming from Homeland Security, or we started to talk about this yesterday with Harris Corporation out of Florida, who's selling these spy stingrays to local police departments, make sure that box never gets to the police department. Ship it off somewhere to Zimbabwe. Let them have it. Put a stamp over the top of it, says, on its way to Zimbabwe. It's never going to make Miami. It's never going to make Bent Elbow, Louisiana, or Crooked Knee, Tennessee, or wherever the heck it was supposed to go. You see, if you're willing to do what it takes, I watched this program, and I talked about this yesterday, called Flame and Citron. It's a story about partisans in World War II. They were Dutch. The entire movie's in Dutch, by the way, so you got to pay attention. You can't, this is not one you can actually have a conversation with somebody sitting next to you when you watch it. I saw it on Netflix. It's available there. It's called Flame and Citron, Citron. Flame, like as in flame on a candle. They called him Flame because he had red hair. This is a true story, by the way. This isn't a fictional story. It's true. These guys went after anybody or everybody that was colluding with the Germans. Now, there were a lot of Dutch, just like there were a lot of French, just like there were a lot of Polish, just like there were a lot of people in countries that were overtaken that colluded with the enemy. And they went in, and if you ran a bar or a hotel and you were assisting the Germans and the Nazis in those days, they'd burn your place to the ground. If you were a newspaper man who, they had one example where the guy was a newspaper man and they killed him. They walked up to him, shot him right in the street. That's the price that traders pay. Now, am I advocating that we do that? No, we're not in a shooting war. So don't go there. I'm not suggesting anybody go shoot anybody. But, nor am I suggesting you burn down a newspaper office. The point is simply this. We're not there yet, but there are a lot of things that we can do to bring down, and if you want to understand how, go read some of the partisan documentation from World War II, from occupied France, occupied Italy, occupied Poland, occupied the Netherlands, and the Scandinavian countries. Read what they did. Did you ever hear about the kids in Norway that literally put all the community gold, the government gold, on their sleds, and they sledded right past the Germans with the country's gold supply? That's true. That's a true story. They got all the kids together, and they needed to get the gold out because the Nazis had come. And they couldn't figure out a way to move it because any adult was searched and whatever. So you know what they did? They got all the kids to sleigh ride down these hills from the community at the top of the hill all the way down to the docks on sleds. And they put 1 or 2 gold bars under each kid, and the kids sledded right past the lines of Germans marching up the hill to take over their country. Your job is to be a partisan. Legal, nonviolent, but be a partisan. Why? Because it's the only way right now that we can go down without a fight. It's the only way we can go down right now without creating a bloody war. It's the way that we can fight back. It's the way that we can resist. And that's what you are. You are a partisan, and this is resistance. You are resistance. And resistance can take many, many, many forms. Doesn't have to be violent. You can file Freedom of Information Acts on everything. Get your computer, open up Word or some document processor, and start filing Freedom of Information Acts. You know what they cost you? A 46-cent stamp. That's it. 46-cent stamp. File 100 of them. On everything. It doesn't even matter what. File them with your city council. File them with your state. File them with your federal government. File them with the thousands of myriad of agencies that are out there. Why? Because somebody's got to be taken off the front line to do all that work. My dad served in World War II. And he said that at the height, when they were overrun by Japanese, and he fought in Okinawa and in the South Pacific. And he said to me, we were vastly outnumbered. I mean, terribly outnumbered at certain times. And he said, at one point, the strategy was, don't shoot to kill. Shoot to wound. Because when we wound him, we've taken that guy out of the battle. But it takes 2 of his friends to get him off the battlefield, and we've effectively taken 3 people out of commission. And that was how they reduced the odds. I mean, they were vastly outnumbered. So how did they balance the odds? They took 3 people out for every guy they shot. The goal is not to expect that we're going to win. What I want you to do is get into the mindset that the raw truth is this. We're in for a guerrilla war that's going to last us a long, long time. Perhaps a generation, maybe more. Well, that can't happen here. Okay, you can go ahead and fool yourself with that nonsense. But it is happening here. And it's happening already. It's happening right now, right around you. You could pretend it's not happening, but that doesn't make it so. I'm reminded last night, I was watching Fox News, And I was watching an interview, I think it was on Megyn Kelly, and they had these two guys talking there. One of these guys was a Democratic analyst, strategist, whatever you want to call him. And they were talking about this problem over in the Ukraine and about how the reputation that the United States now has under Obamacare is, for all intents and purposes, a laughingstock. And this guy came out from the Democratic side and he said, well, nobody's advocating we put 150,000 boots on the ground. And he tried to misdirect the whole conversation away. He wasn't interested in actually having a legitimate discussion about the real topic of why the world looks at us as if we're weak, which is directly related to our president in this administration and all of his advisors, I might add. He's not alone in these decisions. But his goal was not to attack the problem head on. He knew he couldn't win that fight. So he tried to misdirect and mislead. He's like the wounded bird or the bird that pretends to be wounded to lead you away from the nest. He wanted you to follow him down the road of idiocy, lunacy. No, of course, no one is talking about putting 150,000 boots on the ground. But we probably could have done something a little bit better for the Ukraine than give them MREs. That's what we gave them. They came to us asking for money. They came to us asking for ammunition, weapons, and material, supplies. We gave them MREs. No guns, no bullets. I mean, it's kind of an insult, wasn't it? The point was, your job is to do essentially what he was trying to do. Misdirect, mislead, slow it down, confusion, sow confusion. You know how partisans were successful during World War II? They sowed confusion everywhere they went and chaos. Didn't matter whether they weren't trying to win some battle. It's strike and leave. It's cut and walk away. It's not cut to kill, it's cut to bleed. But when you got enough cuts and each cut lets out a drop, soon you got a court. Now you got a real war going on. This is a war, whether you choose to believe it or not. It may not be a hot war yet, thank God. But at some point, you got to realize just how far down the rabbit hole this whole thing's going to go. Your job is to be a partisan. Legal, peaceful, civil. But there are a lot of ways that you can accomplish that. You can take 3 people off the battlefield for every one that you wound. That's the concept. How do you do that? Well, you file lawsuits. You file a lawsuit in your state court. You know what it costs you? $18, $20, $50. Consider that your deposit to liberty. I don't care if you win. It's not about winning. It's not that you're going to win. It's that you're going to tie up 95 hours by 3 attorneys who got to sit there and do that instead of figuring out how they can shaft you. Go to your city council meetings. Force them to be accountable. Force them to produce documentation under your state sunshine laws or your state exposure laws. And if they won't, file a Freedom of Information Act. File a Freedom of Information Act anywhere and everywhere you can. It costs you nothing to accomplish. Nothing. Not a penny. Just the filing, the stamp. That's all it's going to cost you. The stamp. There are a lot of things that you can do. If you have some money that you can apply to this, if you're a business, how about a local billboard in your community? You want some billboard ideas? Write me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. We'll talk about it. The idea is how many people will see that billboard and suddenly realize, man, maybe there is something more to this than I thought. You've just enlisted how many new soldiers? If you work in a business that deals with the government in any way, shape, or form, when they place an order, delay it. I'm not saying do something that will hurt you or your business or your company. Make sure that their order gets as delayed as long as possible for a supply they need and then make it go the slow boat to China method to get there. I don't care if you're shipping it from, from Pennsylvania to Ohio, right? Make sure it goes by way of Taiwan on the way around. The truth is, that's all we can do for right now. But it's good practice and it's training. And it's setting your mindset to realize that, yes, we are not powerless in the face of treason. Get on a political campaign. Get on a political campaign and destroy it from the inside. Do you hear what I just said? This is 2014. This is a political year. Between now and November, every person who's running for any position, irrespective of what party they're for, are running campaigns. Get on one. Get on a campaign of someone you don't want to win. Obviously, you don't want to get caught at this because, you don't want to have been railing about how terrible that. But get on their campaign and sabotage it from the inside. How hard is that? They do that to us all the time. What do you mean you don't know how they do that to us? Don't you remember that the Democrats were funding the senator who ran in 2012? I can't even think of the guy's name. He said something about women and abortion, and, of course, the whole world blew up at him and put him out on a firing squad, political firing squad. The Democrats were pouring money into his campaign to keep him in the race. Believe that? They were actually funding his campaign, making campaign donations to him to keep him in the race. Why? Because if he had the party's blessing to keep going forward, they knew they could beat him. And it was actually cheaper to keep him in the race than to pay their own candidates' bills. Think about it. Imagine the damage you can do to a campaign from the inside. It's espionage. Not illegal. Not saying you should do anything illegal. I'm telling you to be creative. I'm telling you to work from the inside out. I'm telling you, if you work for a police department, if you work for a federal agency, if you work for conservation, if you work for Border Patrol, if you work for any of these groups, become a whistleblower. But don't just find one thing and blow the whistle. Get documentable evidence and expose it secretly, quietly. Find someone in the alternative media. Why? Because, like Snowden, you can't go to Congress because you'll end up with your brake lines cut doing 80 miles an hour into a tree. Like Snowden, you have to go someplace, not to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, because your fate will be similar. If you really have damning information on an agency or a government entity that you work on, and you're a true whistleblower, you have to go to alternative media. But imagine what you could do. Think about the change Snowden made in the United States of America. Think about it. I mean, here's a guy, and whether you believe he's controlled opposition, a part of the game, I don't care. The point is, he opened up a dialogue that awakened literally tens of millions of your and my compatriots. And that, whether or not he's controlled opposition or not, that worked for our purposes. Millions of Americans have suddenly come awake and said, wow. I mean, I thought that was just rumor. Maybe things really are worse than I thought. Send me email with your ideas. Creatively. Make them legal. They're monitoring all of our email, by the way, so don't do anything stupid and put anything in there that you wouldn't want somebody to read. And trust me, they are reading them. So send me email and just give me a list. Boom, 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 boom. 20 ideas each. I want to see 20 ideas out of you. What can you do? And I'll compile them all. I'll try to organize it in some way, and we'll go over it. Let's do that for the next week or so and see how many ideas that we can come up with about what can you do to be a partisan to gum up the works. How much sand can you throw in the gears? Legally, peacefully. I have to keep saying that disclaimer, otherwise I won't return from vacation. All right, we're wrapped for the day.